Howdy hackers, and welcome to another episode of FairLight TV. I tend to focus a lot to have kind of diverse content, but there is one aspect that we have been neglecting for a bit of a time. Digging through C64 games, getting really gory into the assembly code and see what's there. So we will do that. I will be hacking around in the game Terrormolinos. Over to that. Okay, so why Terrormolinos? I mean, there are a number of games out there, and why would I devote my time to that? Yeah, the the rationale is rather weird, actually. Ari-Pekka, Sardax. We are Facebook friends. I can't say that I know the guy well enough to be a Facebook friend of his, but anyways, this is a guy who is finished and who lives in Terrormolinos. And of course, the game Terrormolinos is about a British family from Slough going on holiday to Terrormolinos, which is of course based from Torremolinos, just kind of an adjusted version of the name Torremolinos. So this is the reason when Ari shows that there is good weather in where he lives now, I always think of this game. So over to poking in the game. Okay, over to Melbourne House. I've been digging through Wikipedia and a number of the sources online, and it's a bit confusing to kind of get a grip on. As I understand it, in 1977, two guys started a publishing house for publishing books and computer software in 1977. And by then, I mean, computer software was a very small business. So I guess the predominant part here was to actually publish books. Again, my assumption. But then in 1980 or something around there, Beam Software was set up in Australia, and that was a software company, and they sold their software through the publishing of Melbourne House. So that means that all the Beam software was actually branded as Melbourne House when it was sold. Beam was later sold to Infogram and is now from 2006 called Chrome with a K. And and also in 1987 the publishing company was sold to Mastertronic, one of the really known sellers of computer games. The first one actually kind of digging into the pocket money level of computer games. But do I have anything from Melbourne House? Yes, the most important book in my life, whole Commodore 64 whole memory guide, that is produced by Melbourne House. So you see the logo up here. So yeah, Melbourne House. But they also pushed a number of the really important titles on the C64. And again, I wouldn't know if this comes from somewhere else and was only published by Melbourne House, or if it was actually developed by Beam Software. And I would like to not dig into the details because I might be totally off here. But if it says Melbourne House on the label, I'm still going to call it Melbourne House. And I'm not going to list all the titles because there are quite many and they are quite varied, but most of them are really good. Rock and Rumble is one of the titles I played a lot. The very same game was called Bop and Rumble when sold in the US. But if you bring it back to the really early days, in 1982 they released The Hobbit. So it's an adventure game that has a lot of graphical aspects to it, and that was an absolute smash hit. And of course, Way of the Exploding Fist is also one of the absolute smash hits under the label of Melbourne House. But we are now going to look at Terrormolinos. The game is built on a software engine called the Quill. It's said to be heavily modified. I don't know what that means, if they made some sort of extension to the original, or if they had their own version or whatever, but made from the quill, adventure game. You type in commands. It reads, I think it's the four or five kind of significant characters, and then you can write anything you want. So as long as the word starts correct, then you're in the safe. So you can spell inventory very wrong if you just get the four first characters right. So yeah, let's dig into the software of Terrormolinos. Yeah, let's throw the tap into the TapX and then just allow TapX to do the extraction for me. So yeah, that's what we have here. Okay, so normal Commodore headers, we don't need to go through those. I've done those a number of times already, so no point. Then we have Pavlod. It's of course a loader that sort of plays on the very nice dessert pavlova. But anyways, so the key thing it loads is this one. The file is, I think it's OF, right? And when that is done, you can see it loads. It's standard Commodore load interface. So it sets the file name to the file name it has 4 characters, and the file name is on 0934, so just here. And then it loads from tape, so set the logical file and stuff, and then it calls FFD5, which is the normal load routine. It does a jump subroutine to 1000, and then it loads something else, and then it's a 5-character file name, and the file is on the name is on 0938. And then it sets up the logical file, and then it loads, and then it starts on 6500. Okay, so let's go to that first file. All right, so here we have that first file loaded, or the beginning of that file, and so it's going to load the big chunk, and then it will call this, and as you can see, it is doing something. It's setting to RAM, and then it's copying a big chunk of memory, and when that is done, it's doing an RTS. So loading a big chunk of memory into lower memory, copying it up into high memory, and then returning. So it's going to fill the entire memory basically. So it's loading to low memory and then chuffing it up into high memory from 8000 and onward, basically up to FFFF. And then it loads the other chunk starting from 0800, and basically the entire memory is then full, and then it calls 6500. So that's what you have. And I just run TapX and it extracts a number of files, and then I could just read them in. So let's see how the reading in is done. All right, so it's basically this. TapX is a bit weird, so you cannot select the destination. It will always import stuff to its own home directory, and then you need to export it from there. I've asked Tom a number of times, and I don't see why he doesn't want to do that, but yeah, whatever. So what I do here is I first import this RIP. So it's normally loading from 1000 to 9100, and as we can basically understand from the disassembly of that little piece on 1000, the chunk of data is from 1100 to 9100, and then it copies that to 8000 up until the end of memory. So what I do here is I import, and then I skip the first hex 100 bytes, so the copy routine and stuff, and then place that on 8000. And then I import the rest, so 0800 to 6200 to 800, where it's supposed to be. And then we already know that this game will then start on 6500. Yeah, there is a bit of loading into that as well, but I don't need to have that. So these are the pieces I need, and this is how I import it. And I will always export a temporary file with this, so main.prg, and then I import main, which is the segment I'm having here, and then I'm also adding patch. So I'm making another segment in KickAssembler, and the reason for doing that is that I would have overlap. If I place small patches inside here, KickAssembler would complain, and there is no allow overlap option unless I'm doing it like this, as far as I understand. So this is how I'm doing it. And then I'm allowing overlap here between the segments. All right. So about the game. You are a guy from Slough. You are going to bring your family and a number of items, place yourself in a taxi, and then you fly to Terrormolinos, and you're going to take 10 pictures, and then you're going to go back home, and if you've taken the 10 correct pictures, then you have won the game. The issue here is that you only have 16 pictures in a roll of film. So there is basically something you can train here. You can allow the player to get a new roll of film. So that's one of the things I've done. And of course, as in most adventure games, when you're adding stuff to your inventory, you're adding weight or adding available slots. So eventually you would have too much stuff and it would start complaining. And I had issues complaining that I had too much. So what I did was also implementing a trainer for that. So I have 2 in-game trainers in my version of this game. F1 getting a new roll of film, so basically giving you another 16 pictures. And the other one is decrementing the inventory with 1. But please mind that this is sort of a difficult trainer. It's nice to have it, but there are potential side effects. If you toggle down to 0, and then you take something from your inventory and you drop it, the game has no protection from going under 0. So you would have basically -1 items then if you had 0 and then dropped something. So what I've implemented is that next time you press decrease, it will set it to 0. So if you go under 0, then it will set it to 0. Otherwise, it would decrement it with 1. So use it with care. It's there and it's a bit handy to have, I would say, but there could be potential side effects that I might not have captured. And it's a bit silly that the game itself does not protect itself from kind of getting into the negative in terms of number of items. But there is one other thing I would like to show you. You can, what you can do is load game and save game. So it takes the game status and it stores it. And if you look at all the other versions out there, and there are a number of versions, they all use tape here. And if you're running this on a modern setup without a tape deck, you don't want to save to tape. So I have made the trainer also so you can select between tape and disk. So that now works fully. So you can store to disk. There is only like 1 save slot. I didn't have enough memory for adding anything fancy, so you could have multiple save slots. But this is at least giving you the opportunity of saving to disk rather than tape. Let's see if that works fine. And yes, it loaded. You couldn't hear that, but there was sound in the background for that. So it did load from disk because I had a valid save game. The other issues that many people had was the fact that if you took the entire game and packed it together, it became too big because you can only load between 0801 and CFFF. So that's a 202 block maximum file. If you load anything bigger than that using the stock kernel loader, it will start loading over the IO. And yeah, well, I guess you've seen that a number of times. When you load over that, then the entire computer freaks out. So that's sort of the maximum. And if I take, this is Sir 13's version of the game, what he needed to do was having a first file that was 50 blocks, and then he had another file which is 199 blocks. So it's basically sort of replicating what the game is doing itself. You load a section of the game, and then you move portions of the game up under the high memory, and then you load the rest of the block. The only version I found that was actually going to pass that 202 block issue was the one by Flash Cracking Group. That one was 198 blocks, I think. Let's see that. Okay, so here we have that one. So TBG, I don't know, it says Flash Cracking Group on the one I have, but I guess that's the person doing it. He was able to do it in 198 blocks. So well done. From not having like the relevant crunchers that we have today, then squeezing this down to 100 and 200 blocks was really a feat. Not even Mr. Z could do that. But I, of course, have Exomizer and modern crunchers, so I didn't have any problems adding an intro and still managed to squeeze it under the 202 blocks. So yeah, let's see my version then. Okay, so it's not really released yet, but it's 186 blocks. And again, that would be including an intro. And then I have a doc file, and then I have a save file. So the save file is from 0200 to 024B, I guess. So all the settings and of everything is in that little save file. And let's go through what is the content of the save file before we start to see this version in play. Documenting the game was quite the feat, and I'm not saying I've done it, but I've researched a lot of the resources online on the Quill, and I could pick up a few of the tips from there, and then I've added my own digging through the game, and yeah, let's see what I've found. So first of all, the save file is from 0200 to 024B, I think it is. And this is where all the relevant parameters for the game are saved. So when you save those very few bytes and then you load them back, then all the state of where you were when you saved, they are preserved. So, and the first one would be the location 0200. So first byte of the file you're saving. And this is where you have your location, where you are at. So here we can see the locations, and I will scroll through them, not very fast. So if you want to reproduce this, you can do this by watching. You can get lost in the catacombs. So there are a number of catacombs, and I'm sure they have a sort of different entry and exit points, which makes them very confusing, but the text is the same. This one I also, it doesn't have any text. So if you go there, there is no text at the beginning of the screen. So I don't know what that is. And then you have this plane of snark. So if you go there, and I can sort of enforce that, then it draws a picture of a horse, and it has a lot of things there. And those are not items you can pick up in the game. So yeah, and then it quits saying, are you playing the wrong game? And then yeah, it sort of ends. So I have no idea what this is. This is probably one of those internal jokes that I just don't get. Yeah, so those are the ones. Okay. And then you have here the data. I think we will need to shrink this a little bit. Right. So 0200, we already discussed that, is your location. 0201, so there is a parameter for if it's light or dark. So if you go up in the attic, unless you turn on the light, you don't see anything, so you can't pick up the stuff that's there. So you have to do it. You have to turn on light. And if you do turn on light, then this one turns 0. 0202, that's the number of items you're carrying. So the trainer I implemented where you press F1, I'm just decreasing this basically. And then I have a bit of a precaution to ensure that if you go under 0, I will not decrease it. And if you still drop stuff, if you have 0 and you drop stuff, then that one actually goes under 0. But then I ensure that if you press F8 again, then I'm storing 0. So I'm doing what I can to restore it to a reasonable value here. And then you have a number of flags that decrease, and there are guidelines online for when they decrease. Some decrease when you have when it's dark. I guess this means that you can have stuff like a candle that burns out so it can only be used for a number of turns, or a flashlight or something like that. And then you have like a general decrease, so it stores a value and then it decreases. My assumption here is that the first one that this is used for is the taxi. So if this one decreases too much, then the taxi will eventually leave. If you take too much time in your home, you would probably have the taxi leave you. Yeah, and not all of my notes are really relevant. Ken barfs. That's one of the things that happen. And when Ken barfs, a new value is stored in this. And I have no idea about the game logic that sort of makes that relevant. Opening the cabinet. So a number of flags here. So when you are progressing the game, you are changing a number of the flags, and then the flags would open or close different opportunities inside the games. And again, I don't have the insight of the game logic, so I understand all of that. So picking up the tickets would have you, yeah, like that. All right, and then you have a few of the really important ones. Photos taken, again, that's also one of the flags, I would say sort of a parameter byte. So this is the roll of film. This one is 10 hex 10 in the beginning, so that means it has 16 pictures. But if you run out and this one turns 0, then you cannot take any pictures. And unless you've taken all the 10 relevant pictures that you need to take, then you cannot complete the game. So my F1 trainer, so the in-game trainer where you press F1, restores this to 0A, so 10 hexadecimal. And when you have done that, that means that you have like a new roll of film. You have the same amount as you would have using a blank film. Yeah, a number. This one, the flag 27, it's used heavily, and this is where it's storing a number of the parameters. So when you are progressing, it's fiddling with this one, storing new values here. And then a really key one would be this one on 021D, so successful pictures. This is counting the number of pictures where it then shows graphics for the actual picture. And you need to have 10 of those when you return. If you don't, then you haven't completed the game. And then the last 3 here, one would be score. So you are scoring a percentage. So it's storing a new value here when you have sort of completed one of the missions that you are supposed to complete. Yeah, so this is stored in hexadecimal, but then it's printed in decimal. And this one is the number of turns. So the low portion of the decimal value, so the 2 lowest bytes in the 2 lowest characters or numbers in the decimal number here, That one's stored here, but as hex. And then you have the high byte sort of here. So anything above 100 would be here. So this one turns 1 when you have 100 and 2 when it's 200. So yeah, so those are the flags. And then you have the items here. I've tried to explore those, but poking values into those doesn't always give you something in the inventory. So they might be something, it's just that I don't know how to kind of provoke the game to show them to me. But you have Beryl, Ken, and Doreen. So Beryl being your wife. That should be 2R, shouldn't it? Well, anyways, Ken and Doreen. A red hanky, harpoon, snorkel, bedroom brochure, Rickery steps, blah 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 blah. So these are the ones I identified, and yeah, this one is just a note that when you are at this destination OF, that's actually your hotel room, and then OF turns up. So when you enter your hotel room, you open it automatically opens your suitcase, and these are the stuff that you have inside your suitcase. And all of that. So, and my ambition here was also to note that some of the items are default at a certain location. So location here is 05. That means that Beryl at the start of the game is in location 05. And we can have a look at the locations here. And that would be in the bedroom. So Beryl is in the bedroom when you start the game. And then when you're doing stuff, the relevant parameter. So let's say you drop the snorkel. That means that the snorkel's position will be where you drop it. So what it does then is that it stores the location you are at here in the relevant byte for the snorkel, and then it's there. But you can also have it like on you, and you can wear it, and it can also sort of not be enabled yet. And that's storing a special byte in the location here. And we will go down to that. So all the items, if you are storing FE in the corresponding byte for the item, you are wearing it. And no, sorry, you are carrying it, and you would see it in your inventory. I hope you would. And then you have something like the trunks, or possibly the snorkel. I'm not sure about the snorkel, but I'm really sure about the trunks. So if you're having FD in trunks, you are wearing the trunks. And then you have FC, which is a byte that the item is not yet sort of triggered into the game. And when you do things and that item appears in a location, that FC is overwritten by the location where you can find the item. Yeah, I think this is most of what we have here. Did I write anything else here? Item. No, I think this was sort of it. And again, if you would like to have this for your own reference, let me know in the comments below and I might send it to you. Okay, just let me scan through my little fix file. So again, going through how I do things. I set definitions here for a number of sort of parameters for my trainers. Yeah, not all of those are actually needed, but they are there. And then I import my trainer macro. So I'm not generating a trainer every time manually. I have a macro for it, and I just populate it with the relevant parameters. Sometimes I use my own print routine, and sometimes I'm using AB1E, which is a convenient way of printing without using any sort of separate print routine. The routine is rather small, so I could just let be and not do the AB1E, because there is always sort of error that can arise from using basic. But yeah, let's see if I'm using it. Own print. So I'm using my own print. I'm not using AB1E. You've already seen this import piece, and then I'm doing a bit of patching. So I'm doing patching for calling the in-game trainers here. Yes. So I'm doing that. Init, and then I'm executing the trainer. So this first trainer is for the in-game, setting up a new roll of film. The second one was decreasing the inventory, as we discussed before. And then I'm using this little thing to select between disk and tape. So tape, I'm leaving it as it is, but if you select D for disk, then I'm adding a few things here. And then I'm adding the key patch here, and then I clear the, what is that? I'm setting the color. Yeah, I need to set the color to black before I return to the game here. And then I return to the game. The trainer code, and then the little key patch routine. So rather than calling the normal key patch, it's calling the key fetch routine, it's calling this one instead, and then I'm returning to where it came from. My little disk save routine, and the name of that one. Normally, as you can see here, I'm using high score and a few spaces -FLT, but here I'm using terror save. Yeah, that's everything. I should possibly also show you the make file. So executing the fix, that was the file you've just seen, and then I'm doing Xamizer and I'm calling 6000. I'm loading that back to 1800, and then I'm using a temporary file of that. And then and that one is used. I'm storing that in the directory of the intro as a sort of a standard file name. And then I'm executing the trainer assembly file, or assembling that, and that one imports the previous one. And then I'm adding my function to Xamize that one, and then I'm doing the build c64.asm, cleaning out a few of the directories because I don't want them clogged with sim files and shit I don't need. The build file, rather easy. So .disk. I love that you can do this within Kick Assembler. I know that people think this is bloat, and I would like to do it as an external tool. I love having Kick Assembler do this for me as well. So generating the files that you have in the disk, and then fetching the relevant file from the PC file system here. And you also here see that I have a docs file. We can go through that one as well. We do have a docs maker. That's the docs core. Yeah, let's have a look at the docs instead rather than the source, because the source for that one might be a bit boring. So let's do that. Okay, as we've seen before, those are the ones. And docs. So when I'm doing the docs, I'm writing a normal PC file. And then I have a converter tool that converts this into formatting, so you don't have words that starts on one line and continues on the next. So I'm checking for words too long to fit at the remainder of the current text line, and then it wraps, so it inserts the space it needs for that, and then the new word starts on the next line, and then this is it. So this is not cleaned up yet. TNG will have a look at this before we are going to release it. Let's see. I'm describing my part of the work and describing the trainers if you would like to have a read on that. And then it is basically the text that you read on the inlay of the tape. So that is that. And then I also added a solution. I found a solution online and I went through that and I complemented it. So one of the things I added here was that when you have a direction, I tend to find it useful to see where you end up, because then you have a reference on every of those commands where you are at, rather than just pressing randomly. That's walking a bit randomly, and I find that difficult. So I would like to have that. So that's why I added that. So I did complete the game using this, and it works fine. Okay, so one of the other things that I might give for you in this game is showing the commands it can actually accept, and the length of the commands it's accepting. So if from the address of 50EE, you would have a number of directions. And my assumption here is that N and north gives you the A, so that's direction 1. South and S would give you a B, so 2. So it's transferring or parsing the directions into a direction code that will be the one that comes after. So it's 4 characters and then yielding that direction. And then my assumption is that from wherever the down and descending would be that would still be direction, and then kame, I guess that's camera. So then you have a number of nouns here, and then at the very end you would have all the verbs. And I'm not going to point you in any particular direction here, but you might find it entertaining to look at the last few verbs that are available here, and feel free to try them in the game and see the result of that. We're not doing this for kids, but a few of those words wouldn't be appropriate for kids. So the FairLight version, again, it's not really complete yet. I would have TNG validate everything before we actually launch it. And I've also done a bit of additional work since recording the first pieces here. So there will be a little bit of a surprise for you when we get this game. Let's see, we can run it really fast. Okay. So crunching, or rather decrunching. I have added this thing, which is watch the slideshow. So unfortunately you cannot run that and then continue the game the way I've done it. That would have been sort of a nice feature, but I didn't manage to squeeze that into sort of the same thing here. So you can press S to watch the slideshow. You can watch all the, I think it's 13 pictures. Yeah, something like, no, it's probably hex 13 pictures. So there are a number of pictures in this game, and this will show all of them to you in a repeat. So just press space between each of them and you can watch all of them. Yes, and then you have press G for going to the game. So F1 is adding new film to the camera, giving you sort of 16 new shots in your camera. And then I have decrease inventory, and this is a bit awkward, so use this with care. It decreases the inventory by 1, or sort of the weight or the count of the items in your inventory. So it will not go under 1, under 0. So you cannot kind of go into the minus. But if you have a number of items that you carry, and you set this one down to 0 by pressing it repeatedly down to 0. And then if you drop one of your items, there is no protection in the game itself from going under 0. And there is no way I could capture all the possible cases here. So use this with care. If you need to pick up one more items, then just press F8, and then you have one slot available, and then you can pick stuff up. I should also say that if you drop a number of things, so you are actually going into the minus and you press F8, I would restore the 0. So if it is in minus, then I will restore it to being 0. Okay, but I would like that. And then the key thing here is the implementation of the tape or disk destination for save files. And here I should also point one thing out. I had serious problems implementing this. So pointing everything into disk was no big problems. I implemented that and it didn't take that long. And then I saved everything and everything looked absolutely fine. The storage was there, the length of the file was absolutely fine, and I couldn't see any problem with the content of it. But loading, I didn't return to the same position that I had when I stored. So this was all very confusing. So what I then realized is, because this is using stock kernel, so I thought there could be no error in the stock kernel. But they had made one little thing that was so confusing. The entire load routine is depending on the 6502 Y register being 0 throughout the entire time. And that's fine. It does that inside the game. So, sorry, inside the kernel. So there is no problem with that. But then there is a call to the run stop key. And that goes via a vector. And they had changed that vector. So during the check of the run stop key, they changed the Y. So when it was reading something that was supposed to feed to the save routine, then that value was totally off. So the actual data that was stored was actually totally off. So I had to restore that vector into what is normally is inside kernel, and doing that, it worked flawlessly. And I have no idea why this was, but it was a very confusing error and it took quite some time to find it. But now disk works. Yes, and I will just show you here how the trainer works. So you see here pictures taken, successful pictures, and your score and the number of turns taken to get to that particular point. And then I just do load game. And yeah, I don't think you hear the simulated disk drive sound, but there is a simulated disk drive sound because I'm running Vice here. And you see here that I'm moving to a position where I have six successful six pictures taken, and 6 of them are successful. So all are successful. My score is 67%, and I've taken 105 turns to get here. I might as well show you that. So I'll throw in that little window to... Right. So M0202. Here you see that there is a value of 12 in 0202. So that is the value that holds the number of items you have in your inventory, right? And then I'm pressing F8. Let's see, and let's do that. And then I can do that again. And now you see that the value is 11. So we had 12 here, and now we have 11. So the inventory thing works. And I can also press that one a number of times. And now I'm pressing. And we do 0202 to 0205. So you see that one goes down to 0 now. So now I've decreased it to 0, but it didn't go any further. Inventory. Okay, let's say drop cubes. Okay. Drop hanky then. Okay, now I've dropped that. And let's repeat that. And that one's also 0. Drop lotion. You can't. Oh, okay. And if I drop my trunks, I will actually get arrested. So I'm not going to do that. Well, anyways, what we can do then is press F1. So I pressed F1. And then we can do M02. No, that one. Let's. Okay. So you see two things happening here. First of all, it didn't update the number of pictures taken. That was still the same as before I did the key update. But seemingly the parameter was still changed. You just didn't see it. But if you just take a photo, then it will increase from 0. So then now you see that the picture taken is 1 because that is the one I wasted. But it started from 0. It didn't start from the value I had, 6. Before. Yeah, so that was the FairLight version of Terrormolino. Should we restart the game and have a look at the slideshow as a final thing? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so the TV chef is already here with the dish prepared. So let's watch the slideshow. First picture. I think that's a barrel on the beach. The first one was the plaza. Yeah, and this is also from the beach. So it's the second beach. Third beach. Third beach. Okay, and then you go out into an island where Doreen is doing stuff, and there is a grenade there. Yeah, so this is bullfighting, I guess. Yeah, Beryl in the cellar of the vineyard being afraid of a spider. Restaurant, and going to this restaurant you need to have the tummy pills because what they're serving there is probably not very, you can eat it, but it will make you sick unless you have the pills. And this is the clock tower. Yeah, this is this one, the weird one, which seems not related to this game at all. But here we see the picture. I don't know. This is this barrel as well? No, this has to be the other one, the one that had the crab. Yeah. I haven't done this, but I guess this is if you explode the grenade on that little island where Doreen is. Yeah, and you are sick. This is if you're not putting your stairs up. You need to lock the stairs before you climb them, otherwise this happens. And this is if you're dropping your trunks. So public nudity will yield you a time in prison. And then, of course, you failed the game. This is, I think this is sort of a general, you failed. And this is if you are drowning and the lifeguard would have to save you. Bull contact of the 3rd degree. And now we're back at the plaza. So, that's everything I had today. I hope you enjoyed the game Terrormolinos. Feel free to play the game. This version would eventually be at CSDB, and probably it's already there when you see this. So enjoy FairLight's version of Terrormolinos, with a special greet to Sardax for living in Terrormolinos.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
FairLight.